let's talk about the 12 books I read in September. So I had some catching up to do on my book reading goal. My goal is to average one book per week for a total of 52 books for the year. But I fell behind earlier in this year. It was just kind of a rough time. And so I decided I really have to get on the ball. The first book was The Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel. The first book I finished was The Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel. I checked it out from the library, so I can't hold it up, but it was a very good book. And it's actually one that I would recommend most people read. I probably will just buy a copy so that I can remind myself of the different things that are in it. I really liked how he kind of brought in, the psychology of money. Why do we do the things we do with money? And it was really about, to me, the philosophy of money. Why do we spend what we spend, and goal setting, and why, when we're thinking about saving, why do you even want to save? Or if you're gonna spend, we're all rational people, and sometimes we do things that are seemingly irrational, that kind of goes against the advice of various personal finance gurus. And I like this book because it kind of showed you that, and without letting you off the hook of you should just be irresponsible with your money. The next book after that was Little Town on the Prairie. And this was a good one because this comes directly after The Long Winter. And the Long Winter was just such a hard one to get through because it was just so much sadness, and it was such a long, hard winter. I mean, it did have, a little bit of drama in there. Mary goes off to college, and there are blackbirds that get in the corn. But mostly it's just kind of that nicer kind of just pioneer life, not a whole lot of terrible things in this book. So I did enjoy that. The next one was These Happy Golden Years, and I really enjoyed this book. I think because this is when Almanzo and Laura are, they have their courtship and it ends in their marriage. Spoiler alert. And so this, I actually have a good copy. Our other one is really falling apart, and I think we found this at a thrift store or something. But this one has the actual color illustrations by Garth Williams, which I really enjoyed seeing them in color throughout the book. But this book was just nice. Their romance is about as steamy as I want a romance to be. I'm very old fashioned, I guess, in that sense, but I like Jane Austen. I like Laura Ingalls Wilder. They're talking about courtship and they eventually get married, but of course it's just supremely clean because they didn't feel the need to include this stuff back then. Or actually, there were books back then that would discuss these things, but hers is not one of them. So then this book I started reading actually at the same time as another book. So this book is The First 4 Years. And the book that I started reading simultaneously with it, because I usually have a few books going anyway, was Prairie Fires. So, and I don't have a copy to hold up right now because if I did, I would just be telling you I didn't finish it. And the reason I did not finish it, and it's rare that I don't finish a book. Usually if I pick up a book and I start reading it, I just kind of try to power through until the end, unless it's really just something where I just can't justify the amount of time. But years ago, I had heard about a book about Laura Ingalls Wilder. It was basically her story, the actual story behind her life. And I read an article about it, and this was maybe 6 or 7 years ago. And I thought, I really want to read that. And so then since I was reading this series, I thought, I'll go pick it up from the library. And I thought the book was Prairie Fires. So I picked it up and I started reading it, and I read the first 50 pages and I just was not feeling it. I did not I just didn't like the way it was written because there was just so much information about the history of, what was going on at the time of the pioneers. And I don't know, the tone from the author kind of felt I don't know. Like, here was one thing that really rubbed me the wrong way. She said that Laura Ingalls Wilder was, she had an intellect, but she was not an intellectual. And there's nothing like technically incorrect about that. But I kind of felt like that was, I don't know. I just didn't feel like she really liked Laura Ingalls Wilder, that she was just like writing a book about her. I could be wrong on that. I just didn't like it. But something good did come out of that, which was in one of her, like maybe it was in the text or maybe it was in a footnote, but she mentioned the book Pioneer Girl, which was the autobiography of Laura Ingalls Wilder. And I thought, oh, well, that's the book I was trying to read in the first place. I realized I had the wrong book. So I turned that book back in. Like I said, I got to page 50 and it's a pretty long book. And after I put it, I gave it back to the library. I looked up reviews of it and it looked like that, like as the story went on in the book, as the book went on, she really has a beef, I guess, with Rose, which is Laura Ingalls Wilder's daughter. So anyway, point is, did not finish that one, but I did finish the first 4 years. And this book is so sad. It's just like tragedy after tragedy. And this was actually not a finished book. This was basically a draft form of a manuscript that Laura had planned, I guess, to publish eventually, but she just didn't have the heart after Almanzo died in real life to finish it out, I guess. And so, this book, there's so much heartbreak. They get married, which you think, oh, okay, great. It's going to be like a nice, happily ever after story. But there's like disease. Almanzo has a stroke, basically, that leaves him like kind of crippled. And it also has the death of a child. I mean, this is like really heavy stuff. And it's a pretty short read too. It doesn't take very long at all, but man, it was a rough one. So, to move on, this book, The Power of Habit, was a great book. This was not the first book on habit that I had ever read. And if I had to just pick one, I would pick Atomic Habits by James Clear. I really like that book the best, but this is a great book. And probably like had I read them in a different order, maybe I would like this one better because it's kind of like, I already knew most of this stuff that's in the book. Like I knew about habit formation and that kind of thing. But there's a great appendix in the back of just a basic outline of how to recognize a habit in your life and how to reverse engineer it so that you can break the habit and put a good one in place of it. I have found that technique that he outlines is exactly how I have broken bad habits, when I was losing weight, like how I actually had to, figure out, watch myself and then figure out what I was doing and why I was doing it and then change the behavior. All that stuff that I didn't know that I was doing it basically the same way he says to do it. So yeah, I can say the information in this book is very good because I've lived it. Next book is Farmer Boy. So this one I loved. I loved this book. This is the story of Almanzo, which was Laura Ingalls Wilder's husband. Everybody knows that, I guess. But this, to me, I felt like this one was more of like a happy childhood kind of story. Like there were some things that were kind of serious. Like she talks about how these grown boys, basically the older boys would just try to break up the school. Like they would come to school, and I think there was even the mention of some boys that killed a teacher. But there is a neat little story about how the teacher brings a bullwhip to school to basically protect himself against this kid who's going to try to beat him up. And it made me think of the current situation in the school systems. I know many teachers personally, and it's really rough out there. And it shows me, this is not necessarily a new problem. That there has always been, when you have mandatory public education, you're going to have rebellion and stuff. So anyway, great book. I really enjoyed it. I think she was able to write this book, you know, a little bit more detached and probably picked out the nicer stories from Almanzo's childhood. And it's just written with a little bit more carefree kind of attitude, which I really enjoyed. Next book was Matilda by Roald Dahl. Am I saying that right? Roald. Pronunciation.
Roald Dahl.
Roald Dahl. Okay, so Roald Dahl. This one is illustrated by Quentin Blake. So a couple of different things. One, I wasn't a huge fan of the illustrations just in general. Like, I don't know. I don't know why. It was just not my style, I guess. And then also the story. I loved this book. No, I loved the movie when I was a kid. And like my sister especially, like we would just sit there and watch this movie over and over and over again. And so I was really expecting the book to just be amazing because I loved the movie so much. And generally speaking, I enjoy the book a whole lot more than I do the movie. But I actually did this one as a read aloud for my son. My son loves Roald Dahl books. And so I was just reading it out loud to him. And I don't know, like, the thing about it is there were different characters where I just kind of felt like, I don't really know this character. And yeah, the characters were over the top in some ways, like, you know, the Trunchbull, she's just kind of this evil character. And I don't have any problem with a character just being evil, but I don't know, like the way she talked to kids, it was just kind of off-putting. I don't know. It wasn't funny to me. And I don't know, like her, you know, Matilda's parents are just jerks and I didn't like the book. Okay. I didn't like it. I love Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. Charlie and the Chocolate Factory was one of my favorite books when I was a kid. I read it several times. I even read the sequel. But I don't know, like maybe I had my hopes up too high for this book. I don't know, or maybe I was just in a weird mood. I don't know. I didn't finish another book, you know, and then I didn't really like that one. So maybe I was just in a bad mood. Who knows? Next was another nonfiction book, and this was To Sell is Human by Daniel Pink. So I read this book because, marketing, selling, that's one of my biggest weaknesses when it comes to, you know, being an entrepreneur and a writer and stuff. I don't like marketing. I don't like to sell, but I do know, like this book says, like everybody is in sales. Like everybody is in the business of, even if you are solely a stay-at-home mom, you are selling your kids on various things all the time. You're trying to get them to do their homework or to do their chores. And so you have to learn how to sell to people. There was actually a kind of a funny part in this book to me because it confirmed for me in black and white that I have this weakness because I'm an introvert. So I don't know if you can see it, but like over here, this smaller bar, that's introverts and how good at sales they are. And then over here, there's this graph, and like the people that are the most introverted or the most extroverted are the worst at sales, and I'm very introverted. So that means I'm bad at sales. But the book doesn't really let me off the hook because it explains how to understand where you're at, and then how to, harness the different skills that you need in order to become more of an ambivert, at least when it comes to selling. There are just specific skills that you can acquire. And I mean, I know these things, but here's what I really found the most interesting in this book. He gives the story of Elisha Otis, who was famous. Everybody knows like the Otis Elevator company. And he is the one who actually came up with the elevator pitch, because that's part of selling, is pitching. And again, something I really dislike doing. But the neat part to me was the story, which was that Otis had invented this thing that would make elevators safer, but he had to convince the public that it would work. So what he did was he rented out a convention center in New York City and invited a whole bunch of people to come. He built an actual open platform elevator so everybody could see what was going on. He then hoisted himself with the elevator 3 stories high, and then he took an axe and he chopped the lift line. And so then what happened was the platform fell like it would, normally do, but the safety brake, which is what he invented, engaged and it showed everyone that this was actually safe, and it convinced the public, which again, that to me was the neatest thing I learned out of this book. Although really good information, it's one that I should definitely probably own and reread until I get those lessons through my head. So the next book I finished was Pioneer Girl. I read this cover to cover. So Pioneer Girl was the autobiography of Laura Ingalls Wilder, which is actually, that was what she originally wrote, which was eventually turned into the Little House series. So she wrote her autobiography. She was trying to get it published. Her daughter actually was a famous writer. I didn't even know this. Her daughter was a famous writer who got her into writing. And so that was just kind of mind-blowing to me. But anyway, so they were having trouble getting her autobiography published. So what they did instead was they kind of switched around the angle a little bit and made it more of a juvenile series, just kind of targeted towards the juvenile audience. And so that actually did have some interest from some publishers. And so then she ended up getting it published. But this is more like the original version of the autobiography, and it's got copious amounts of footnotes, so many, and I read every single one of them, and it was very interesting. I will say that some of the footnotes were a bit repetitive, which I assume is because they don't necessarily think people are going to read every single footnote, but I did, so just be aware that sometimes there's going to be repetition there if you read it. But there was also a lot of photographs, it was just neat. They even have the entire juvenile version of Little House in the Big Woods, just the first draft. So, or the first typed up manuscript. So this was a great book. I highly recommend it. I love reading about writers, and so this one is a great one. If you're a fan of the Little House series, I would recommend it. And I will say too, there are things in the books meant for children that were just slightly changed from her real life. At one point, she said to an audience, basically, "I've always told the truth in my stories. I just haven't told the whole truth." And so there were parts of the various books where, there was a slight change, or she combined several people that she knew from real life into one character. And then some details were just kind of changed, different order and everything. And it was really in the service of just making a better story. So I like that phrase, "Fiction is a lie that tells you the truth." I do feel like it gets a little bit different when you're trying to tell the true story of your life. Where's that line? Where do you say, okay, no, but I'm really trying to tell about my life. But in this book, it also explains just, or it shows, I think, how difficult it is to remember your own timeline. She did get dates mixed up or people mixed up. And I started thinking back on my own life. I thought, man, she did a great job, because there's so many parts of my life where I'm I don't even remember what age I was or what that person's name was or exactly the order of events. So anyway, great book. Next book on the list was Steal Like an Artist. Now this is a reread for me, and it is a super short book, super short, but so helpful. I love this book. I keep it around just to remind me about being creative. I think the biggest takeaway for me, a tip that he has, is to basically get away from the screen, to just do things manually, go back to being analog. So, I mean, digital things are great, but I have found that I do better work, I think, when I use pen and paper, or, draw things out, at least do the outline on paper with pen and stuff instead of like getting on the computer. If I get on the computer right away, the work just I don't think is nearly as good. It's a good kick in the pants kind of book too, if you find that you want to create things but you're not really creating. Next book is On Writing and Writers by C.S. Lewis. Now, my daughter discovered this book. We were looking up quotes by authors, and she found several by C.S. Lewis, who's I think my favorite author. I'm pretty sure that's who my favorite is. Anyway, she found this book and she was asking me like, why don't we have it? And I was like, I've never even heard of it. And so we looked it up, and actually it's a very recent kind of publication. What it is basically is just a collection of various essays and letters and things like that from C.S. Lewis that discuss writing, because he wrote back to people who wrote him, asking him advice about writing or just, talking about his stories and stuff. So yeah, this was packed full of great information, great advice, just encouragement also. There was like a list of rules for, like when you're writing, here's like a list of rules. And I really found that helpful. And interestingly, the first rule is turn off the radio, which goes exactly along with like what he's talking about, which is basically turn off the screen. Now, I mean, he also says to watch movies and stuff to kind of like get inspiration, but C.S. Lewis, I think they kind of are saying the same thing, which is don't like just get distracted and stuff and not create. You need to focus on the work. And there was another little sentence that I think is just really encouraging, which is if you become a writer, you'll be trying to describe the thing all your life. And lucky if out of dozens of books, 1 or 2 sentences, just for a moment, come near to getting it across. And that is something like whenever I'm writing, no matter how hard I try, I always feel like, that's maybe better. Like if I work on it, it's like, yeah, that's better. But it's just not, I'm still not getting that exact thing that I want to say on the page. So it's encouraging to know that even C.S. Lewis, who was super successful and an excellent writer, felt like that maybe a couple of sentences out of all the books he wrote kind of got to that point where he like really clearly communicated what he was trying to say. And the last book was The Bad Beginning, ironically, by Lemony Snicket. So this book I read because we watched the movie. And so maybe I should stop watching movies that I plan to read the book for, because I didn't really enjoy the book. Now, maybe it was because we had just watched the movie. I mean, we watched it on Saturday night, and then like a couple of days later, I started reading the book. And I don't know, I just don't know. I don't know if it was the tone of the book that I didn't really enjoy. The narrator is constantly giving the definition of a word, and sometimes it's done in kind of a funny kind of a way. But most of the time, I just kind of felt like maybe as a kid I would have enjoyed this book. I can see that like probably if I had read this at an early age, I would have enjoyed it. But reading it now as an adult, I just didn't really like it. Now, I do plan on reading more of these because my son, who I want him to read more than what he does, he actually really liked book 1, and he's reading book 2 right now. And I like to read what my kids read, or at least be aware of what's in them. And so I'm gonna go ahead and probably power through the rest of this series. But yeah, not my favorite. For me, that's a lot of books in 1 month. I don't often read that many because I have other things to do. But I was really glad to get back on track. I was upset with myself for being so far behind. So this coming month is October. My plan is to read some scary things. The one I'm going to start out with is Ray Bradbury's From the Dust Returned. So I'm hopeful that I'll enjoy this book. I do love Ray Bradbury, as I've mentioned before. So I've got some other ones on the docket too, and then we'll see how it goes. And I'm curious to know, what are you reading this month? Do you like to read scary things? I like to read scary things, but like I said, Stephen King, if it could just be the scary stuff without the adult content stuff, I would read more of his stuff. But there's just always some some sexual stuff. I'm like, I don't want to hear it. I don't want to think about it. Because it's like, once it's in my head, like there's no getting it out of there. So anyway, if you've got recommendations on people who write scary things that are also clean, let me know. And let me know what else you're reading, or if you've read any of the stuff that I read and what you thought about it. So thanks for watching, and be sure to like, comment, and subscribe down below. Allie McGee comes home from school one day to find that her little brother Pete is gone. She remembers the imaginative stories he told about a magical tree in the Forsaken Forest, and she immediately sets out into the woods behind her house to find him. She begins to realize his stories were true when she finds the enchanted tree and is transported to a different world, only to discover that Pete's been kidnapped by the wicked King Olshek. She must go on a dangerous journey to the land of Hinnom to get to the castle where her brother is being held captive. Will Allie be able to save her brother? Or will she too be taken prisoner in Olshek's castle?